When you mentioned you fell in love with Christ, would you tell me who Christ is?
So, I felt, am I on? No. Suddenly I can't hear myself. Okay. The way I fell in love with, I will try to answer your question, with Christ was through the Christian mystics so after I translated John of the Cross, I was asked to translate Teresa of Avila. I wasn't the slightest bit interested in her, but she ended up filling and saving my life. And then I did a book on Francis of Assisi, and then Hildegard of Bingen, and Julian of Norwich, and just one mystic led to another, and one publisher led to another, and before I knew it, I was translating and writing books about all of these Christian mystics. So I would have had to be made of stone to not love the one they loved. It's the first thing I want to say. In my book, my memoir, Caravan of No Despair, thank you. I answered that question in great detail at the very end of the book. Like, I had this epiphany when I was writing my memoir, is when I finally admitted my love of Christ, and that it came through these beings that love him so much. And it was all in the wake of Jenny's death that I started doing all these books with the Christian mystics, and it was 10 years later that I was finally writing about her, because it took me really 12 years to write a book about her. The epiphany came at the very end of writing the book. It was like, oh, I could not have survived this experience if not for these mystics, and if not for Christ himself, who infuses their hearts, or Christ herself, as my beloved Julian of Norwich calls her. So for me, Christ is love, is simply love. So when that troubling, problematic scripture of "I am the way, the truth, and the life" makes a lot of people feel excluded, I feel included. Because if Christ is love, then love is the way, love is the truth. Love is what infuses us all with life and connects us all to each other. And Rabbi Jesus was not such a bad dude either.
Hi, Mirabai. I too am a grieving mother, so I relate very much to what you're saying, particularly about the dark night of the soul. So my question is, you said, in the dark night of the soul, we rest in this radical uncertainty. I think that was your phrase. Well, I don't feel like I'm in the dark night of the soul right now, but I certainly feel like I'm in radical uncertainty, like every moment.
Right.
So do we ever come out of the dark night of the soul?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, and my deepest compassion to you, sister, mother. I think that we never, that's a wonderful question. I don't think we do. I mean, if it's a real dark night, I think it just integrates with our being, and our broken hearts expand to contain what is. And I don't know, how recent is your loss? Do you mind if I ask? Oh, that's so recent, 6 years. So I think that we learn to make friends with, I called it radical unknowing. Yeah. I think we learn to be companions with the mystery, and we don't fight it. And we just get big enough to hold it. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Mirabai. I too am in a grief process, but that's not my question. But I appreciate your comments about that. My work is what we're all talking about today, which is leading women through embodied spiritual practice, coming fully present in the body, working with that in the intimacy of the sisterhood with each other and the intimacy with the divine feminine. And I guess I don't really have a question except to say I'm tired. It is hard work. I have women come and they just like, oh, this is wonderful. I consistently hear, I never knew how much I needed this.
Yeah.
And they never come back.
Huh.
So it's just been, feels like Sisyphus task.
Yeah.
It's just uphill all the time. And, it doesn't deter me because it's my work, regardless, it's my practice.
Yeah.
But it's also discouraging.
Yeah. Oh, honey, I hear you. It's like, what was it? The tailor's children's clothing is torn, or something like that. But the cobbler's kids have no shoes, something like that. So we forget, and I do too. My husband's sitting right there. He knows how I can pour it out, and then I just forget how to sustain myself. But one of the things, how do I say this in a gentle way? I deeply bow to the work you're doing. But if I think or you do about that it has to be a certain way, then we're going to be disappointed, because we're not going to get that our deepest intentions necessarily reflected back to us. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about acting without attachment to the fruits of your actions, that doesn't mean we're not supposed to care. That's the patriarchal version of that teaching. Like, oh, I don't give a shit whether people care, respond to my teachings or not. Of course you do, and you must. But this is the way I have reclaimed that teaching through a feminine lens. Instead of saying act without attachment to the fruits of your actions means that you do what you do without any agenda. No, you do it caring deeply, but you do it as an offering. And in Hinduism, when you make an offering to the guru, you, like, say, fruit. You make an offering of fruit. You make that offering to the altar, and then after a ceremony, a puja, you receive that piece of fruit back, and you eat it, and guess what? It has been transformed. I think they call it transubstantiation in the Christian tradition. And that fruit is infused with grace. So I like to think that everything that I'm doing as I'm attempting to lift up the feminine right now, and it is hard work, and it can be very lonely, is coming, whatever comes back to me is the Guru's grace, is that fruit of my offering, and so therefore it all counts. Nothing doesn't belong, including my disappointment sometimes. And if I'm going to eat my own medicine or take my own medicine, then I have to remember that it's not up to me. The patriarchal model is the lone prophet, charging into the wilderness to vanquish evil. And we women, even in the women's spiritual movement, buy into that conditioning that it's up to us. We can only do this together. So the fact that you're here today, I'm so happy. Let your cup be refilled, my sister.
I want to thank you for your presentation. It was only about 20 years ago, which is not a long time ago, the Presbyterian Church at the General Assembly, there were a group of women who made a feminist presentation for the whole church, and they were fired. I celebrate what you are doing. This gives everyone a lot of hope.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm also a grieving mother, and I have a question for you. Have you experienced your daughter from the other side since her passing? Would you mind sharing some of that at all?
No, I'd be very happy to. And also, there's some of that in my memoir. But I would say that the main way that I experienced Jenny, so the fact that my first book came out the day that she died meant that I was called to step up in the world at the same time that I was forced into seclusion. I actually did a year-long Jewish mourning practice of basically removing myself from the world. And turns out the world waited for me, and when I was done, I came out. When I did when I was ready, I wasn't ready, but when it was time, and I had to step onto a sort of bigger stage, I did it with her. I just called on her. It was Jenny and Teresa of Avila that were my team, and Maharaji, Nimkroli Baba, my guru. Like the three of them, let's do this, guys, because I can't do this alone. And ever since, I feel like every book I write, every time I enter a stage kind of space where I'm giving a teaching, I take a moment and try to step lightly out of the way and ask her to come through. I can't make sense of the fact that she died as I was stepping into my own prophetic task in this world, except to enfold her as my ally on this journey and my voice in many ways when I feel completely voiceless, which I often do. Yeah, so whether it's, magical thinking or not, that's the way that I feel that we're doing this work together. Yeah, thanks for your question.